It's time for your weekly dose of the wrong idea. In case you're unfamiliar, being wrong is about embracing subjective experience over objective truth. We're not interested in being correct, we just want to explore our own insights and opinions. I'm Lucas, here with my brother Jack, and we are continuing our look into belief systems. We're doing a deep dive. We've done 3 episodes so far. Jack, what do you think are the biggest takeaways you've had from the episodes up to this point?
Well, I think that the biggest takeaway from the previous episode, as was most fresh in my mind, is that being intentional with how you form your beliefs is incredibly important, wouldn't you say?
That's absolutely true. And I think that we are trying to do this whole process very intentionally, where we started by categorizing beliefs, understanding what beliefs are, and then figuring out, can we sort of have a model that helps us break down what kinds of beliefs we have, whether they're descriptive, prescriptive, or evaluative beliefs. And that gave us a place to sort of start and latch onto. And I found that to be a helpful framework just in general, in thinking about everything that we've done from this point on. Have you found that to be the case as well?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, another thing that I think was important is we sort of found the incredible value in being able to find your core beliefs. That was a lot of fun. That's an incredibly fun exercise. If you guys want to try that out for yourselves, go check out the last episode. We outline a whole way for you to try and identify your own core beliefs and, sort of start building blocks to create your own belief system. And then of course, if you want to really just, get your foundations really good, your fundamentals down, go check out that first episode. It's just what are belief systems. You get that sort of the who, what, when, where, and why sort of, but not literally. You get what they are. How do we use them? Why should we care? So that really sets the stage for, I think, what we're trying to do here. Like you said, this very intentional take on what we're doing with the wrong idea.
So, given what we know now, we have an exercise that's helped us identify some of our core beliefs. And my question is, like, how is this useful? Why did we go through this exercise? So I pose that as a question to you first.
It's a good question. And again, I think that the practical value which they hold is it allows you to make informed decisions. I think that's going to be really important. I really want to make sure I highlight this because this is one of the first things that comes to my mind when I think about this. Being able to make an informed decision in every situation is just about the best thing you can do. You don't want to just start throwing darts blindly. Maybe you're going to hit a friend in the face or hit someone in the hand. You don't want to do that. You want to at least be able to take a step in a direction which you can take steps to follow. I think that just trying to go into something blind sort of sets you up to be in a place that's a little bit too far out of your element. Of course, every situation is going to bring new challenges and new experiences, but I think that you should at least be in a direction where you have something to stand upon.
Making decisions intentionally, or you also, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said, essentially the decision making process is the where this comes into play. And I totally agree with that. I think the point of identifying our core beliefs is that when I make my decisions, oftentimes what I have to do is figure out how to frame the decision I need to make in terms of what matters to me, what I care most about. And in doing so, I can often make the choice between, is this action that I take, is this, if I make this decision, if I do this, is that going to be aligned with my beliefs? Is it going to be an authentic response?
This I like. That word authentic, we had a whole episode on authenticity, which I enjoyed. That was a lot of fun. And I think that making sure that you present yourself to the world authentically is incredibly important. It's a quality which is advantageous to have. One, because you don't have to try putting on personas. You just are who you are all the time. You don't want to be trying to act a character when you're around, when you're friends, your family, maybe your significant other, maybe when you're in your job, you're at school. You don't want to have 5 different people that you have to act as. Just be one person. It simplifies everything. Two, I think just in general, it gives people a far better sense of trust in you. If they see that you can act the same and, present yourself in the same manner to sort of everybody, I think it also presents a sense of confidence that you have in yourself. You're very comfortable in your own skin. You don't really need to, think about everything that you're doing. You kind of just are yourself. Like I said, it gives off that aura, a little bit, that aura of confidence. So I think that's really where that, sort of having these beliefs to settle on will, help you with being authentic.
You said present yourself authentically to the world. I like that, but I also want to focus in on what I would say acting authentically in the world. What and this is particularly important in the context of this conversation because what we're really trying to get at, or at least what I would like to get at today, is how we use our core beliefs that we've just identified to effectively operate in the world. So it's not just about how we're presenting ourselves or how we're being seen by others. It is very matter of factly about how we affect the world around us.
This is a good point. I'm glad that you're making this emphasis because I think that at least when I'm thinking about this now, one of the first things that is coming up is you want to be able to use these core values that you have set in place to inform, not core values, sorry, core beliefs that we have in place to set up more, maybe more minute beliefs. They're more specific to certain things. That's what I'm trying to think of. Maybe if you're trying to form a maybe a political belief on a polarizing issue that's going on right now, you want to be able to make a decision which aligns with your core beliefs. That should 100% be something that you want to do. You don't want to be just making random decisions and trying to see where it ends up. You want to have something which aligns with how you truly feel on the inside.
And that notion of aligning with how you feel or aligning with your beliefs is sort of what I'm thinking of as authenticity, as almost a definition, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, authentic in the sense of, like you're saying, is this ability to act on the values which you truly have imparted upon you. But I think we've touched on this before. I'm going to pose this question to you. It's sort of hard to, act when you don't know what your core beliefs, core values are. So, is there really a way to be authentic if you don't have these sort of beliefs in place?
Well, absolutely. Okay, so this is a very good question. To your point, I think that we can act authentically even if we're not doing so consciously. And I guess that's the point I would be trying to make here is that we are intentionally making a conscious effort to identify our core beliefs and then figure out how those are going to manifest in the world. And that's actually where I wanted what I wanted to ask you about. But before we do that, I do want to address this point of can we act authentically without these beliefs in place? Well, the beliefs are in place. It's just a question of whether or not you have identified them, whether or not you are aware that those are the beliefs you're acting on. And in the sense that like you're not intentionally being authentic, but as long as what you're doing in the world is reflective of what you believe, I would still consider that to be an authentic response.
I do agree. I think that regardless of what your subconscious does, it will reflect what you have on the inside. And I'm going to pose this as a question to you, but I've sort of come up with an answer that I like already. But it's, why is it really important to be in touch with these beliefs? Well, I think it's important because if there are aspects of yourself, your being, the way you present yourself that you are unhappy with, it gives you a place to start to try and amend them, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I think that the value of recognizing your beliefs is that it starts to give you that conscious control over them. So like you're saying, subconsciously we know what we believe. I mean that's sort of what we're talking about. It's like this is sort of our beliefs are the things that we're predisposed to because they have become baked into our subconscious experience. We enough seen these things enough times. I call them like heuristics or rules that we've adopted that we've seen enough times effectively in the world to be able to operate on those principles. And so, yes, being able to recognize what principles you're using is what allows you to gain more control over how you act and who you are. Ultimately, it's like if I know that I believe this thing or I recognize and identify consciously that I believe this, now I at least have the ability to say, okay, well, do I want to believe this? And that's an important question to ask. And I'm sure we'll get into that next week when we talk more about changing beliefs. But I want to shift gears back to the question that I was asking. How do beliefs manifest in the real world? So, sort of, let me frame it this way for you. When we make decisions in the world, that involves us taking action. We have some behavior that is exhibited. And I want to connect that behavior to the belief. How, and that's what I mean by manifested. So, how do behaviors manifest, or sorry, how do beliefs manifest in behaviors?
This is interesting. I mean, initially, my mind is sort of just in the sense of your beliefs will just sort of manifest in your like initial reactions, your initial, sort of gut instincts is probably a good way to put it. I'm just, thinking your initial response to anything, I think, will be the response to which you have as your sort of beliefs. And then they sort of begin to manifest once it starts to bubble up to a more conscious level of what you're actually thinking. Maybe you have an oh shit reaction or an oh yes reaction to something. I think that's maybe your belief manifesting to yourself. Then there's sort of that, it's going to bubble up to your surface and you're going to start to form some words, form some thoughts, maybe expressions or bodily movements, whatever. That's how they're going to start to manifest in the world. So it's that sort of conscious level of where you are that starts to manifest it to the people around you. I think that's where I'm initially at. What do you think?
That's interesting. I wouldn't go to the place of making the conscious versus subconscious distinction, but I see what you're saying, and I think we can get to where you are. But let me give you the the thing that kind of clicked for me the other night when I was thinking about this. So I think there's a missing piece in there. I don't think it beliefs directly manifest as behaviors. I think there's a middle piece here that we should identify. And this is going to give us another sort of simple mental model to reason about things, I think, effectively. And it's going to manifest ultimately in another practical exercise I think we can do. And I want to get your response to that. But let me give you the missing piece that I came up with. I think it's belief, value, behavior. In other words, the values that we have are the meaning that we ascribe to our beliefs. And then based on what that meaning, that's sort of what matters to us, why we care, that then is going to dictate how we behave because we're going to act based on what we value. And so do you see what I'm getting at? There's this sort of the level of our actions are going to be mostly affected by what we care about, and what we care about is the result of or is the meaning we ascribe to what we believe.
Wow. Yes, I absolutely do. I think this is a perfect piece to fit in here. I hadn't even thought of this yet. I knew there was going to be some way that you would come up with some fun abstraction for this that I was going to totally gloss over here. So I just wanted to see where my mind went. But yeah, I mean this totally clicks. This totally makes sense in my head. Those. I think what did you say? It was beliefs are the values we assign to our what? What was it? What did you
So
say?
let me give it as values are the meaning we ascribe to our beliefs. So if I believe that we should treat everyone fairly, then what I'm really saying is that I value equality of opportunity, for example.
Absolutely. Okay, I like that a lot. I think this fits perfectly in here, and I think this almost calls for maybe an episode visiting how these values ascribe to our beliefs, but that this is for another time. But I think this is incredibly important because I mean to me this sort of like that this value which you have I think is sort of my I guess sort of missing piece when I said it sort of just bubbles up into your conscious. I think that's sort of what I was trying to think of. It's starting to realize what it is that you believe and how it's gonna start to let's use the word manifest in your behavior, how it's gonna become your behavior because it's really what you're gonna end up acting upon in the end. It's not gonna be you're not gonna necessarily act upon the belief in and of itself. Maybe you will in some cases, but I think more often than not, now that you've mentioned it, you will act upon something that you value because it's a judgment. You're going to make a judgment based on some type of value you have, right?
I think that's where I'm going with this for sure. It's something about the ability of. Oh, I actually really like where you're taking me here. Now, this it feels like values are more comparable than beliefs in a sense. In other words, I can sort of not precisely, but quantify it more. This matters more to me as opposed to like this belief supersedes that belief. I'm sure you can do that kind of stuff, but there's something about the ability to measure one value in relation to another that's maybe easier to do. Is that along the lines of what you're saying?
This is interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but absolutely this aligns with what I'm saying. You make a very good point. There's no real way to try and, ascribe a literally like you said, you can't ascribe a value to a belief, right? Like you can't say that, this belief trumps that belief because they aren't necessarily going to be related, but I think you could sort of come up with a hierarchy of where you place your values. Maybe you sort of are going to value, yourself and your friends and your family. Those are all values about things that are around you and affect your life. And they're all things which, provide, maybe sources of love to you. But regardless, there is a way for you to sort of rank them and place them. And you can, like you said, quantify them in a way. So it definitely makes them a little bit more. I'm struggling of a way to put this into words, but absolutely. I think that this idea that they are a little bit more comparable to each other is definitely an important piece.
Well, now you've given me, I think, the key here, which is what you said was when one belief supersedes another. I think maybe the way that that happens, the mechanism for that is that you go to the value level, make the comparison there, and then that's how you decide which belief supersedes another in any given situation. It's a question of you're being posed a problem. There is, you have to make a decision based on what you value. You do a sort of rank sorting of your values based on the context you're in, and then those values correlate to the beliefs because again values are the meanings that we ascribe to the beliefs. So when we see competing beliefs, we're sort of able to decide how that hierarchy of which one comes into play, I think based on which, the hierarchy of values, what the priority that we put on one value over another.
This is a good point. This makes a lot of sense, actually. I think something that they actually talk to us a lot about in school is, what are your core values, which is probably why I will sometimes substitute that in for the word belief, because for whatever reason, sometimes they feel very similar in my head. And in a way they are. They're correlated, they're intertwined, but they're separate things. So I think maybe in a sense, some of the beliefs that I've started with, you could almost just categorize as values that you can boil down into beliefs. Maybe, I don't know. It could be a stretch, but I definitely think that in either doing the finding of beliefs or values, you could probably derive the other version of it. If you have values, you can find your beliefs. If you have beliefs, you can find your values. But either way, I think they're both incredibly important for having a way to present yourself authentically, right? I think that's something that we sort of want to round into here, is that without a sense of what you really believe or what you really value, you're not going to be able to act authentically. Sure.
Well, I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. So, I think the definition that I'm giving you is not quite resonating yet, and I think that if we clarify for you, maybe it will help clarify for listeners as well. When I say values are the meaning we ascribe to our beliefs, I'm thinking about a very specific structure here. So, can you just give me any old belief? It can be one of your core beliefs, or it can just be any belief at all. And I just want to play with that belief for a minute.
I mean, let's just take results are an instant, as we revisited that in the last episode, so people can go take a little bit more look into it.
Okay, so results aren't instant. And this was not a core belief, but it did lead to some core beliefs for you. What I would say is that, again, let's sort of frame this in the belief structure that we've been thinking of, which is sort of this idea that results aren't instant says to me that if we want to make progress, it will take time and effort. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
So to me, that's absolutely a belief. But what is it telling you? What is that structure telling you about what you actually value? And my initial reaction there is it's saying that you value hard work in a sense.
This is true. I would 100% say that. I mean, I think the ability to work hard and recognize the importance that it holds is 100% part of the fact that results are an instant. Because if I didn't value the hard work, then in a sense, I would give up from an instant. If I didn't appreciate any of the hard work that I have to put in to get somewhere, it would seem pointless and useless to try and get somewhere, and I'll never end up seeing any results in the first place.
So that value may be the meaning of multiple beliefs, but my point is that you can see the structure of the belief itself is this causal relationship. If I work hard, I will succeed. Or again, in the results take time framework, it's like if I want to see results, then it will take some time. That's kind of the simple framework. So that causal relationship is that belief. The meaning of that belief to you is hard work, or it might be just the value of making progress. Like you value progress in general. That's just you think it's better to change to move forward than to stay where you are. So I think there can be multiple values. You can have a belief can have multiple meanings, but the point is that the value is the meaning of that causal relationship of that belief. Does that make sense?
Indeed, it does. This clarification, I think, is quite important because I think what really is clicking nicely now for me is that it's the relationship between these two of them. The what ends up manifesting really, but due to your belief, it ends up being what you value. You know, results take time to in that time you're going to have to work hard to see those results. So that value is, working hard. You value working hard. So yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it, and it 100% helps it click better in my head.
Now you've taken us exactly in the right direction, which is the context in which the belief arises is important. In other words, it's the meaning that we ascribe to a belief in a context. I think that's been missing from the definition in some sense. It's like, what I have this belief and I'm going to apply it. I need to be able to apply these beliefs in many different circumstances. And depending on the context of that circumstance, it's going to mean something different to me. Is that fair?
100%, totally fair.
So I guess that brings me to the notion of how can we use this to be more effective in the world, to make better decisions. To I don't even want to say better. Let's just stick to making more authentic decisions, where authentic to me here means in alignment with your beliefs. So when you are confronted with a situation, you have to make a decision. And again, this is now a conscious process. We're trying to model our subconscious process, because most of the time what happens is we're presented with a situation, we have to make a decision, and we go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And maybe sometimes we think consciously about it, and oftentimes, for bigger decisions we'll try to be more conscious, but it's not just conscious, it's an intentional process. So I'm going to use this framework: belief, value, behavior. Start with starting at the belief. We need to identify the belief that is going to help us drive this. So for me, what I think I would try to do in a situation where I have a decision to make is I would first start by tracing back a belief that, or recognizing a belief that I have about this situation. What do I think is the case here? What do I think is going on? And then try to trace that back to what core beliefs are holding that belief up. Does this sort of make sense?
I would almost sort of take a different process to this. I have written down in front of me belief, value, behavior. I would almost sort of want to go backwards. I would want to see how my initial reaction is in my head. I'm essentially saying, okay, behavior in this case is literally just what's my reaction? Does my heart rate go up and down? Is there a lump in my throat? Do I have, some bad gut feeling? What is my initial reaction to it? Anything. Maybe my first reaction is I'm laughing my ass off. I don't know. So that's what I would want to look at first. Because then I feel like it would be easier for me to try and work backwards from that.
Okay, I just want to say that, like, I think we're actually saying similar things. To your point, yes. I guess the most obvious thing to do for me is, like, yeah, get your gut response. I believe that this is the right action to take. And that to me already is sort of a belief. It's not quite framed the way that we have been framing beliefs, but I guess my point is that suspicion you have, that gut instinct. Yes, follow that. And I guess my point is start with that in the sense that, like, what is your response to the situation? Okay, recognizing what that is. The whole process that I'm thinking of is a little bit more involved. What I just was focusing on is the belief aspect of it. But maybe you're right in the sense that we should come back and talk about the feedback loop. How, it's not just a linear model, really, and this will get more complex. But, like, beliefs inform value, or it doesn't just go belief to value to behavior. Like, there is some feedback from behaviors back into beliefs, and in fact I think all of them can probably influence each other. It's maybe more of a triangle of things, but I think to be most effective you can think of it as a linear model going from belief to behavior. And I guess let me give you the whole thing. So trace the belief back, or trace your reaction back to core beliefs. Ascribe values to those core beliefs. In other words, connect the belief to something that you value, and then act on that value. I guess I'm not this isn't necessarily, maybe that's not what I'm thinking about is like how to make that decision in the end. If you can get that chain of trace the belief, connect it to a value, and then act in the world, that's the sort of model I'm working with. But maybe you're right in the sense that when we're thinking about it, maybe it doesn't, maybe we don't go through those three steps in order immediately, right?
This is true, but it's interesting to think about in the very least because, again, I think it helps you be intentional with how you make your decisions. And I think you and me have talked about this before. The more you try and make a conscious process happen and manifest, the easier it becomes to become a subconscious process.
Mm-hmm.
I think the easiest thing I could talk to is driving. I've done thousands of laps. I've had thousands of hours in my racing simulator. And as of recent, I got my driver's license maybe no more than about probably 6, 7 months ago. And the second I got into a real car, or I stepped into a go kart, I raced those for a while, everything felt normal. I didn't even have to think about it. I was talking to my friend about this yesterday. When I drive, I'm not thinking about how hard I'm pressing on the gas or what my speed is. I feel it in my back and in my lower glutes. Like literally, that's where I feel it. I'm just driving off a feeling. I'm doing everything subconsciously because I've spent so much time thinking about everything else when I was, younger and littler, and I was still learning how to do all of this. So I think to be able to make authentic decisions on the fly, sort of how you and me have become more accustomed to, you need to think through all of these processes first. Because without them, then I think you are sort of making more impulsive decisions. Not to say that those aren't authentic, because sometimes they can be the most authentic. Though maybe there are tainted feelings, maybe you want revenge for something, then I think they're slightly less authentic to your core beliefs and maybe more authentic to your feelings. But that's a whole other direction that I would have to go. However, I think that taking a intentional way to think about how you want to make your actions relate back to your beliefs and your values is an important process to take, regardless of if it's a linear system like the one we've outlined here or if it's something slightly different. I think just taking an approach to do it will help inform you and help better yourself in that sense. You get what I'm trying to get at here?
Totally. I actually love the thought of, yes, we want to give you a conscious process that you can engage in to get comfortable with that should become subconscious at a certain point. And the goal is to do exactly what Jack is saying here, which is like connect your actions to your core beliefs. Go through that chain, figure out what the impact is of those beliefs. Like if you're going to spend the time to identify what these beliefs are, we should understand how they're going to manifest in the world. And they're manifesting in our behaviors. And trying to think about, connecting those two is difficult. So we've introduced values in the middle to sort of bridge the gap. And then like that's why I'm presenting this, trace, connect, act sort of framework. It's sort of the automatic consequence of framing in terms of belief, value, behavior. I guess it's the practical model that comes as a result of the theoretical representation there. So the whether or not you're actually doing that all the time is not the important thing. It's that is how you would try to go about linking your core beliefs to your actions. You might start doing this with like, okay, I want to analyze an action that I took in the past, and you might be able to go backwards from that action. What was that action based on? I did that because I value this, and then why do I value that? Oh, well, it's based on this belief or these multiple beliefs. I guess you could start with kind of anywhere in that chain and work around. And I guess the practical value here is just getting you comfortable with that process. And so it's not the case that every decision you need to make, you need to go through this process. Like if you're going to pick up a box of cereal at the grocery store, like I'm not saying you need to connect that back to your fundamental view of the universe. Like these are not some decisions are more important than others in terms of the impact that they're going to have on your life. So when you come to those decision points, like doing that authentically, my only intent here is to give you a framework to be able to operate effectively in that situation. If you want to know why you're doing something, if you want to understand, how your value, who you are, your beliefs can help you make decisions, this is the best that I've come up with so far.
So before we close this off, you said something which made me stumble into something which I think is almost sort of a perfect what would be segue into what our next episode is going to be. And it's this idea that you said you should be able to, look at your behavior and see if you are acting authentically. And something else you said was, trace, connect, and act. And to me, what popped into my head, and I scribbled this down, was if you are able to look at your behavior, see if you're acting authentically based on what you're, if you found your core beliefs already, see if that's really in line with how you authentically feel. If it's not, then maybe you can try tracing back that behavior, connecting it to something, and then acting to try and change it or amend it. In a sense, you have now found a way to work from your behaviors to find a way back to changing your belief.
So feedback loops. This is definitely the next logical place to take this. I think you're on the right track completely here. The point is that I didn't want to go there directly from identifying core beliefs to figuring out how to change them, because I think this intermediary step of like, how do they actually manifest in the world? Like, what are your beliefs doing? And this idea of making decisions and the behavior that you exhibit in the world, connecting that to values, helping us understand that this is what's actually going on in the process of every decision we're making. It's happening subconsciously. Here's a tool to bring it to the conscious level to get more mastery over it. The obvious next question absolutely is like, if I find that I'm not acting authentically uh, according to my beliefs, is that because my beliefs aren't what they thought they were? My beliefs aren't what I thought they were, or is it because my behaviors are actually not aligned with my beliefs? Am I doing the wrong things, believing the right things? And again, right and wrong here, it's about, do you actually, are you actually operating on your beliefs, or are you operating on beliefs that you think you're supposed to be operating on? In other words, many people I've found tend to operate on belief systems that aren't their own because they think it's how they're supposed to behave, and so it does result in behavior that is not authentic. And that traces back to beliefs that weren't really aligned with that person's actual belief system. They were just beliefs that they thought they should be using to make the decision. So that's sort of the value. But I'm going to just quickly go back to what you were saying, which is, yes, can we start thinking about this model in terms of making change? Yes. I think we're going to need a little bit more machinery to be able to actually effectively change things. Like, I think you've given us a way to think about how we might start wanting to change our beliefs. You've given us a place to say, this belief is worth changing, but not necessarily the tools to say, how can I go about changing this? Is that reasonable?
100%. And I think that's something which you and me are going to have a whole lot of fun doing before we film our next episode. So before we round this off, is there anything else you'd like to touch on, go into?
No, I think we're good.
Alrighty, perfect. If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to check us out at The Wrong Idea on Instagram, TikTok, and X. And until then, keep being wrong.
Got a thought that challenges the norm? We want to hear it. Post your wrong idea with the hashtag #WrongIdea. That's RONG idea. And join the conversation. Who knows? Your perspective might just be featured in a future episode. Remember, in a world of endless perspectives, all ideas are wrong ideas. Until next time, keep thinking, keep challenging, and keep embracing the unconventional.